solutions using our voices on Black Focus Radio.
Welcome to Black Focus, the show designed with our community in mind, where we focus on our issues, developing our solutions, using our voices. Central Arkansas, surrounding areas, and the nation. Get ready. Black Focus starts right now. Phone lines open at 855-525-5683. So here's your host, David W. Coleman and Robert Webb.
Hey, what's happening? Welcome to Black Focus Radio. Our issues, our solutions, our voices. 855-525-5683 is the number. That's how you get in touch with us. Don't forget, you can catch us on Facebook, Twitter, as well as you can download the podcast as well if you miss the show as well. We're here every day, Monday through Friday. Noon to 2 p.m. We are the only daily black talk show hosts that talk about our issues, and we're very proud of it. Unabashedly black, as we like to say, but we cover all issues that affect the African diaspora and around the country. Want to thank JC Love for allowing us to be on the show. Robert Webb is my co-host. He's in the hizzy. Good afternoon, Robert. How are you?
What's happening, big player?
I'm doing pretty good. We've got all of a sudden the studio is a lot prettier today.
It is, isn't it?
You know,
we got gorgeousness.
Yeah, I mean, it beats looking at you, man. You know, no offense.
Yeah, whatever.
Well, I'd date you if I were a woman, so you'd be okay with that. Okay. So we've got a lot of stuff to talk about today, of course. We've got guests in the studio. And, of course, you know, we always kind of allot Tuesday for Education Day. So we're going to talk a little bit about education and a lot of other things that's on the agenda today as well. And I want to remind people, I've already been getting questions about whether or not Joynette is going to go to the playoffs for Little Rock Central. We probably are. Okay, we just got to work out the logistics. Okay, so that means they're going to end up playing in Northwest Arkansas, which means I got to travel to a place that I don't really like traveling to, but I'll do it for the Tigers and go strap just in case. You know. So, but I'll let you all know. I should know something later on today. But again, the Tigers are in the playoffs for the first time in quite some time, and that's big news for Little Rock Central, considering where they've had to come from. So we're really excited about that. In a moment, I'll introduce my guest, but before we do anything, you know, we have to christen the show, and we do that every day with Black Facts.
Dynamic Black Facts. Our culture, our history, our people.
I thought this was going to be an interesting black fact today, just to give you an idea of how so much has been stolen from black people, and that includes Betty Boop.
No.
Yes, the real Betty Boop was actually...
They stole the Lone Ranger and they stole Betty Boop?
They stole the Lone Ranger and they stole Betty Boop.
We get nothing.
Which reminds me, there is a movie that's going to be out about Bass Reeves coming up here.
They're putting a movie out about Bass?
They're putting a movie out about Bass Reeves.
That's what's up.
And a lot of people don't know, Fort Smith, Arkansas, by the way, is where he emanated from.
Yeah,
so,
him and Dolomite.
Him and Dolomite. So maybe they were like cousins, you know.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Rudy Ray Moore.
She's looking like, what?
You didn't know that?
Really? Yeah,
Which part? Which part? Dolomite or
Dolomite? I knew about Bass Reeves.
Yeah.
Dolomite?
Rudy Ray Moore.
I know about Dolomite.
Yeah, Rudy Ray
Dolomite.
Moore, who so you haven't seen the movie on
No,
Netflix?
my best friend's been telling me to, and she probably did not want to be a spoiler.
You should watch it.
She keeps
Yeah.
telling me to watch it, and that's why.
Yeah, you should. I remember going downtown to the Arkansas.
You're dating yourself, my friend.
Oh yeah, and that's illegal in 3 states, but I'm okay. But going down to the Arkansas when they'd have those marathon movies, and they would have Dolomite and what was Foxy Brown and all of those Black Car Wash. They'd have 5 movies every Friday and Saturday night, and you'd go in about 7, and you wouldn't get home till 2 or 3 in the morning, and just in there watching movies. But yeah, Rudy Ray Moore is from Fort Smith, Arkansas.
The fort.
Yep. By the way, PBS has confirmed that Betty Boop, the popular cartoon character introduced to the world by cartoonist Max Fleischer in 1930, was actually inspired by a real-life African-American jazz singer and entertainer from Harlem named Esther Jones. Her stage name was Baby Esther, but unfortunately, when her character became the first and most famous sex symbol in animation, she was whitewashed, with most people having no idea where the original inspiration came from. Baby Esther had a popular cabaret act at the infamous Cotton Club in Harlem, New York, where she sang with a unique vocal style that featured boop boop ba doops. Say that, Robert. You got it. Sing it.
I'm not linguistic.
Go ahead.
I'm
There you go. Okay.
I'm
And
linguistically challenged.
I love guests who participate at the show. Unlike you, Robert. By the way, we're looking for new co-hosts. And other scat sounds.
I get kicked off once a week. Come
That
on, man.
very same style was heavily imitated by the Betty Boop animated character. Initially, Betty Boop was shown in cartoons as an African-American woman. She appeared in at least one animated scene in the popular Popeye the Sailor Man series. But soon after, she was transformed into a white woman and remained so until her character was finally retired. It's estimated that Betty Boop franchise generated millions of dollars in revenue from television networks and sales of merchandise. Meanwhile, the very woman who inspired the character, Baby Esther, was never compensated in any way. Well, we heard that before.
Yeah, that's kind of common.
In fact, she never even really achieved mainstream success. During her entire career, she was mostly known locally in the New York City area. She reportedly died at a very young age. She is, however, mentioned in many documentaries and books about the Harlem Renaissance, and her legendary way of singing does live on in the iconic Betty Boop character. Ladies and gentlemen,
She was only 15 when she died.
What?
you say what?
She was 15.
Yeah, she was pretty young,
She died from a broken heart.
you know.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Born 1919, died 1934.
So that's your black fact for today.
It's slightly creepy. When she was 15 and a sex symbol like that.
Our history, our people. RJRadio.com.
By the way, and if you wonder where I get a lot of these black facts, this particular black fact comes from blackhistory.com. As I've said over and over again, you get more black history now on the internet than you've ever done in your whole entire lifetime. And that's from someone who studied a lot of black history myself. So.
That's what's up.
And by the way, go out and check out the lady who invented the modern day television security system. She was a sister.
Yup.
So if
You know
y'all
who
know that.
invented call waiting and call forwarding?
Yeah,
The system.
that was a sister too.
Yeah, of course y'all would invent something like that.
Yeah. Ooh,
Caller ID.
I'm gonna start.
Y'all want to know who called it.
I want-
I got them
Let
eyes.
the
I got them
headlocking
eyes.
begin.
You should have saw how the state rep looked at me. She was like, yeah, I'm checking your taxes, player. I'm checking your taxes, player. You better be paid up. We coming at you.
Man, so in studio today we've got a couple of guests. Trace Ann Nelson, who's usually with us every Tuesday. She's always a bright and shining star, and she brings along a second bright and shining star, State Representative Vivian Flowers. So, Representative, welcome to the show.
Thank you. My pleasure.
I know you're probably wondering over there, what the heck did I've gotten myself into? But we've had.
No, I feel quite comfortable.
Oh, great! That's good.
Almost
So,
at home.
well, you might be at home on this show. You just
Dang,
never
she said
know.
she feel at home, man.
So we've got a lot of stuff to talk about today. Of course, we want to get an update on what's going on with LREA. I know last week we had the sit out, or the sick out, I should say, from the students, and there have been nebulous numbers on how many it really was.
7,040.
And of course, we had
What?
Mr. Wet Blanket over here who thought that if they only get 150, it'll be a failure.
I do remember that
You,
quote,
you,
David.
you remember that, Tracy?
Sure do.
Yeah, I
What
do
you-
too.
What say you, sir?
Yeah, what say you, Mr. Wet Blanket?
Good job. Good job. Good job. What can I say? No, I was not being cynical. My point was that you have to have a
We know your
significant
point.
number.
We don't need it in there.
Oh, Jesus.
Let the head lopping begin.
The lopping has begun.
But I think overall, when you consider the number of high school students alone, I think that was an overwhelming success. And I'll be honest,
It was.
I didn't expect for it to be that many either.
Was that reported? There was that many?
What was interesting?
They reported 34-14.
Yeah, and then they revised the number up, but through other means, I was able to identify the exact number,
And you get that little,
which is 7,040.
wow. That's fantastic.
That is.
So what's the next step now? I know now they're going to have a sit-in? Is that what they're calling it?
I mean, I think there are going to be a series of actions because at the end of the day, teachers do not want students to hurt. And so they're trying to find their way to what's the best action. We'll see what that looks like, and I know, we have 2 more state board meetings for the rest of the year, November and December. So.
I'd like to point something out though. Students are hurting anyway. Like through this process, prior to Lakeview, since Lakeview, students are hurting because communities are hurting. And what I love about this really tough time is that it's forcing people to get engaged. It's forcing people to address and understand issues that they weren't even thinking about.
Good point.
It's also opening up the world, good, bad, and ugly, to young people who, like their parents and grandparents, became really comfortable and took some things for granted that we can't afford to continue to take for granted. And I love this fighting spirit. I love the spirit of protest in young people that I think is runs through their veins, whether they know it or not. And when change has happened historically in the United States and outside of the United States, it has always been because young people have risen up and asserted their power.
I totally agree with you, and we talk about that a lot on the show. It just seems over the last, 10, 15 years, young people have, for lack of a better term, become selfish. And it seems now that they're beginning to realize, and I hope they are beginning to re-engage. And I think, I don't know if you heard what President Obama said about the woke crowd is...
Yeah, and so if I could interrupt real quick, because
Okay.
I say this all the time when I speak in groups, it's real easy for us to talk about how selfish young people are and how, fill in the blank, whatever. We the ones who's supposed to be raising them and
That's
training
it.
them
That's
and
it.
exposing them. And if they are not something, it's our fault. So if kids
it.
are asleep, it's because we let them be asleep. Because I remember going a bunch of places when I was a kid that I did not want to go, thought was boring, didn't understand it, and now I reflect back on those experiences, whether they were conferences, conventions,
Right.
meetings,
Church conferences. Church conferences every
like,
summer.
why do we have to do this? Vacation Bible school, whatever.
Church camp.
And,
Lord.
my mom used to always tell stories, you have to go because I had to go, and you go, this is important, and
Right.
talking about the Lord and talking about character and getting up saying a speech.
Fellowship and all those
It's
things.
about that fellowship and learning the things that you only learn sitting around overhearing and listening to grown folks' business that they tell you don't listen to. You hide behind the wall, and that's where you learn all the tea. That's when you learn the lessons. If you somewhere playing a video game,
You don't get that.
you're not gonna get it.
Right.
So, I think we have to stop blaming kids because they're kids and look at ourselves and figure out, what are our priorities and what are we doing to pass down, information and the mantle to young people, whether they're our kids or the younger generation. Because I could talk all day long about how leadership roles have been hoarded by many of the firsts. And, some of that is natural because it's like, okay, we fought, I paid my dues, now I know what I'm doing. Well, if I step down, then we won't be able to get A, B, and C. In the meantime,
There's no cultivation of
you
or
just,
succession plan.
they don't know what to do. They're like, well, forget it. I'm gonna move over here to this state and go make me some money. And then we get mad that kids move when they graduate school. So, let's take responsibility because it's our fault.
You talk about leadership, and my biggest complaint about leadership today is what you just said, is that we've got a lot of people who have gotten theirs, who are my age and Robert's age, 75, 80,
Oh,
and
dirty one.
don't want to relinquish that I guess you said that seat, so to speak.
Yeah.
So when you look at, for instance, and I'll be honest with you, I think there is a lack of leadership overall. There are individuals who are doing things here in Little Rock, but overall, when you talk about black churches, the lack of participation that they do in a lot of aspects, as far as the school system is concerned. I remember when I first moved back, and they were having the Black Lives Matter marches, and black churches didn't participate in those. What's causing that problem? What's causing that gap where it seems that the older leadership does not want to include or participate in some of the issues that young people have today?
Well, I put on my Facebook page a couple months ago, baby boomers, it's time to let go. Just, that was it, baby boomers, time to let
Did
go.
you get cussed out?
Oh. Shouty. Because it is so frustrating, the lack of succession planning, the lack of shared accountability and knowledge and leadership. And it's really hurt the black community significantly, right? Because now we're losing so much institutional knowledge and experience, and we have very little opportunity for people to fit in the gap, step into space, right? Unless you are self-cultivated or self-motivated or have really great parents like Vivian and me. But it's hurting us, right? So it's almost like we're building from scratch again, building movement from scratch again. But I think the good news is young folks are not waiting. They're also experiencing economic damage like nobody understands. Student debt, that's some real stuff. And it has serious economic impact on their ability to provide for themselves. And they're experiencing it at such a high number within the generation that has forced them to sort of look up and pay attention.
Also, action within the
I
government
think the
should be allowed to.
students who were involved in the march against gun violence. I mean, I participated, my kids participated. I was surprised at how many very young people were a part of that. And I think the generation that's being cultivated now and coming, I think they're going to be strong.
How do we well, go ahead.
I was
you
going to
were
add too to that, and people say it in different ways, but in the wake of integration, that really didn't start with Brown versus Board of Education,
Right.
but evolved from that. And so by the time, of the late 60s, early 70s, the mindset of what you were supposed to do to progress was different. And instead of, sending folks off to college and to graduate school and professional school and them coming home to build and use those skills and that knowledge to build existing communities where Black families had land, homes, farmland, insurance companies, hotels. Somehow, the conversation, the perception was, if your kid went to, and a lot of integration mattered. And I'm not saying, I'm one who believes that there was a place for it, but instead it became in place of growth and development of economic power.
And it was better
Black
than what
communities. So the idea is for me to go to a white neighborhood and integrate that community, and if I can buy a house there, I've arrived. Or to put my kid in a school where that school's better because that's where they send the resources. Well, no, it doesn't have to be that. But, so when you have all of these throngs of people who left Pine Bluff, for example, and, so now you have Aunt such and such and Big Mama and Pawpaw, they stayed behind, and you moved to Dallas, LA, New York, Atlanta, and
Memphis.
Stop, y'all.
and folks who or in the country. So when Big Mama and Pawpaw died, what are we gonna do with that house? What are we gonna do with the land? I'm not paying those taxes, right? You can see it all over, and so you see pop up all the time that all of these farms that have been lost, where there was a concerted effort by corporate farms and other farms that were not Black owned to acquire that land for pennies on the dollar.
Yeah.
Same thing you see in cities all over the country where a lot of, chocolate. I lived in DC when it was really Chocolate City, and now it's like Vanilla Swiss or mocha latte. It's different because this migration toward progress, we keep seeing that as acquiring some sort of status that we'll never get. It'll never be that you can live in a neighborhood that's predominantly white and be comfortable and everybody's cool. There's going to be migration from that, and you're going to look up and in 20, 25 years, it's going to be a Black neighborhood.
Right.
So when do we prioritize our schools, our communities that may be diversely populated, may be predominantly Black, may be predominantly white, but when do we say, this is where I have history,
This is ours.
this is mine, this is ours,
We don't take ownership like
and
that.
I'm going to take ownership and grow a business. I'm going to go. That's one thing. I love Queen Sugar. Oh my God. I love that show because it demonstrates what ownership and the land and culture and family history and even family secrets mean to a family and a community. And it's power.
Right, yeah.
It's power.
See, State Rep Flower, she just don't talk the talk, but she also walks the walk. She was instrumental, and I hope I get this right if I don't, correct me, but you lowered the amount for no bid contracts, is that right? Lowered it from...
I worked on that, yes.
Okay.
I probably worked on that bill that session more than anything. My friend and colleague, Michelle Gray, was the sponsor of it. Monty Hodges out of Blytheville was actually the author of the piece that was eventually folded into Michelle's bill that expanded the existing law for minority enterprises to include women. And what it did was combine racial minorities with women and veterans and redefine the goals. But the most important thing that did was to create an incentive utilizing small contracts. And, because you hear a lot of, oh, we couldn't find anybody, oh, or no. And it's very difficult for you to say that if we have minority enterprises registered with the state who have been vetted and you're still not using them. When you have a vehicle that says, the threshold is higher, and instead of 20,000, you have all the way up to 40,000 to create a contract relationship with a company that's already been deemed by the state to be a strong, effective, company that does or can do business with the state. And so I think that next step, I was just talking with Senator Elliott about this a couple weeks ago, where we're going to go back and say, okay, how are we using that? State agencies. Because
how effective, right?
And it's not, it can be effective. The law is effective because it makes it available. You have the businesses, you have the threshold, you have the state agencies with procurement needs. There's no reason why those businesses should not be utilized for small contracts for those.
Is there a penalty, a potential penalty, if in fact when you all go back and look at how they're utilizing it, what happens?
No, nothing.
I mean, this is the thing. Even when this law was created, there were no requirements, no penalties either way. So it's just sort of been there and it's dormant. And I don't see anyone standing up trying to reverse it and becoming, sort of the poster boy or girl for trying to roll back progress against minority business, especially now that minority business includes women and veterans. I'd be shocked if somebody, came out and tried to repeal that. But I think the important thing is that we use it, because one way to repeal it is just to not use it.
Right.
And so it's our, I think, responsibility as legislators, all of us should be, but especially the Legislative Black Caucus members, to hold our agencies accountable and, ask the question,
I want to circle back around to what we were talking about as far as farmers and land and the lack thereof and not paying taxes and so on and so forth. As of late, HBO in one of their series, The Watchmen, I believe, featured Tulsa and Black Wall Street. And as a matter of fact, Oklahoma has now they're issuing a license plate for Black Wall Street. That's another story in itself. But you find that as you look around Ocoee, Florida, Rosewood, Elaine, Arkansas, Tulsa, and there are many others that are not getting the recognition that we need to look at. When you look at this thing about land and ownership, the lack that black people don't understand that when you own land, that is your security to pass down to generations, or is it a psychological thing, including businesses, where I have a fear of owning businesses based on what was done to my ancestors? I know that's a philosophical question.
I think it's a good question. I don't know who's done research on it, but I think that that's real. I think if you see your relative, your father, your grandfather, your mother, your grandmother, if you saw that your mom was a principal, your grandmother was a principal, and she was one of the principals that was removed from her school and placed at a white school predominantly white school during integration, and to be a teacher. So you could be a principal over here, your school got closed, now you can go over here and be a teacher if you want to. And then, you had years and years before you would see black teachers being able to secure those positions as counselors and assistant principals and principals. And you still have scenarios right here in Arkansas today. You ask teachers and parents in Dumas, Arkansas, where it's a struggle for someone in a predominantly black city with people who have degrees to actually be hired on and be considered for some of these positions. There's like a concerted effort to keep a certain level of, how do I put this? Let me see.
Maintain the status
To
quo.
maintain the
Economic
status quo.
injustice, maybe.
Well, and just
Or lack of
closing
economic access.
closing opportunities.
Yeah.
It's the latter. Whether you're in education, medicine, I've seen. I mean, my family, or have careers in health. Many of them, and I've seen scenarios because of that exposure where. There was a young couple of physicians graduated UAPB, and in really sort of systemic ways, they were pushed out of town. They moved to Dallas. And it was always, drama and these microaggressions. There was another physician who was compelled verbally to stop doing one of the kinds of surgery that he did, that he was board certified to do both. He refused. Next thing you knew, he had, complaints not by patients, by the hospital. And then the next thing you knew, he lost his license.
What?
And then yes. And so he has it back now, and it's a long story, but what I'm saying is when you know these kind of dynamics where you might be somebody making too much money, you taking patients from that good white doctor over there, and it happens, then you become a problem, so we're going to destroy you. It's real. If that's my dad, I'm not going into medicine. I want no parts of it.
Or nor will I stay in Pine Bluff either.
Or if, I have my grandfather or great-grandfather, grandmother were farmers. They had land. And they grew their commodity, whatever it was, just like the family on the next land in the county, who may not have been black. And they go try to sell their commodities, and they don't get as much. They try to go get a loan during a hard season, they don't get the loan. I'm not going into farming. For what? I see how they treated my folks.
Makes sense.
Well, and in Georgia, Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, all along the coast, those are all owned by black folks because those are disposable, right? So the barrier islands, as well as the very first edges of the inland, right? Which is now beachfront property.
Which is a lot of that is owned by the Gullah people as well. Gullah people, and in fact, I saw a piece a couple of months ago where they're now trying to come at that land.
Yeah, but they've been doing it little by little by increasing the property taxes out of the reach of the families because now they're elderly,
right?
And they have a set income, and they're unable to pay the taxes that have now ballooned on them, and they're slowly but surely losing property. A friend of mine's grandparents own property there, and it's a simple house. It doesn't even have plumbing, right? But they owned about 12 acres along the beach, and they are punishing them to take it from them.
So how do we educate our people to understand those dynamics? I always say, and I didn't come up with this, but gentrification happens only when we sell. Okay?
But you can't keep saying that, because I'm tired of the argument, because we keep making an argument, the argument's just not true. We don't move back into our communities. We don't take ownership of our communities.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
So
yeah.
it's easy to
What
gentrify.
about where you already are, though? It's the gentrification
but
happens.
the gentrification happens before that, because just like you said about the grandmother, right? The grandmother stays, But when the grandmother retires, her income is low. When her kids grow up, they don't go back to that community.
Right,
They move
exactly.
into another one.
They
and they
move-
have somebody
They move into
else.
the house of the person who bought Big Mama's house for
Right.
$10,000 and put 50
Exactly.
into it. You know, and now
It's
in
a
10
beach-
years it's
beach
worth
front
250.
property. Yeah.
Meanwhile, I sold my old suburban house for 150,000. Like I'm financing the
You're financing
gentrification
the
of my
gentrification
grandma.
of your grandmother. But people don't get
but,
that.
But part of it too is if I don't have the wealth and the access
Yeah.
to loans
Yes.
to develop in that way, then
Or the income.
then you're telling me that Big Mama's house that I have my best friend's grandmother bought a house in East Palo Alto for something like $20,000. When we were in college at Howard, she sold that house and moved in with her sister in the same neighborhood. She sold that same house for some crazy $300,000, something like that. Like undeveloped.
Right. Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
right? Because that's Silicon Valley.
Right.
It wasn't even popping all the way yet.
Right.
She could have sold that house today for $1.5 million.
Right.
So
And that's a wealth changer, right?
Yeah.
for sure. So, you know, none of her siblings passed away except one. And that one she didn't even grow up with. So the bottom line is, with the way things are in her family, she's in Maryland. If her grandmother was still in that house, the decision would probably be to sell. Because even with the family members who are still there in that part of California, they don't have money to redevelop that house and
Yeah,
benefit
to
from.
remodel it, yeah.
It's kind of like this changes for, and it did. Her grandmother was able to help her with college, and when she moved home, with her sons. Even if they didn't need it, it was a gift. Like, she was able to travel. She was able to do things that when she was raising her grandchildren, she wasn't. So it is a wealth changer. But the question is, when will we be able to have access to capital? And if not have access to capital that's available to everybody else, when will we see the benefit of combining our own existing capital and resources to be able to develop? Because we can't wait for things to get fair.
So why aren't, and I think that's what I guess I'm trying to get to, why aren't leaders making those points and saying, hey, here's how we change the dynamics. One, with wealth. Obviously, I talk a lot about voting, but you also got to have that economic power as well. Why aren't leaders, pastors, in fact, I think it was last summer that the AME Church for the first time decided that they were going to take money out of white banks, the same white banks that won't loan to black businesses, black homeowners, and put it into black banks.
But it's happening. You just said it. And I think some of that is generational, because we just talked about the dynamics of the baby boomers, right? And so now you've got folks in our generation, Tracy, who are sort of looking at this, and we're in leadership positions. Some of us are just now getting into leadership positions to say these things and to try to figure out, what do we do next, after not necessarily having been mentored. And I've gotten great mentorship through my parents and others, in the field of politics, wonderful mentorship. Most people have not. Look at Maryland. You just saw Congressman Cummings pass away. The first thing I saw on Facebook this morning is Kwame Mfume is running for his seat. Like, dude, haven't you been retired for 100 years? Like, what? Why?
Aren't you 100 years old?
Right.
Like,
Why are
why?
you coming back? Why isn't it the next generation?
Why isn't it your son? Or why isn't it your chief
daughter.
of staff when you were there? Or why isn't it another young person who you can
Yes.
support? Why would you
A young
do
woman
that?
that's been
What
mentored.
you know what I mean? So, like, what? It's not even. He has great institutional memory. He has relationships. But what are you doing to get in there for 10 years? What are you doing for the person who needs to be
Yeah.
forming his or her own relationships and learning from what you've already done.
And that goes, I mean, and we may not even know, right? I mean, Maxine Waters, she's a wonderful leader, but who's next after her?
Yeah.
Because her institutional knowledge is so vast and so long term.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't even get a chance.
Well,
right?
even that though, I'll say with Maxine Waters, she has a staff
Right.
of people, and oftentimes you see, the chief of staff, your district director, and they step up to run. There's at least a built-in mechanism for people to learn on that level who work in those congressional Black Caucus seats, to learn about leadership, to learn about the legislative process, to learn about campaigns. It's in the states though, like we're a part-time legislature. I don't have a staff. I can't hire people to staff me and to learn about this process and help me and watch my trajectory. I don't, and with the way that the laws have changed with regard to raising money, it's to benefit the status quo and the people in power.
And the people who
so I'm
already
not
have
raising
money.
no $100,000 so I can hire and keep interns hired and
Right.
the whole process of elections here is just different. And then in this state, because you've seen this big transition to supermajority Republican, you don't have governor's offices and statewide offices and congressional offices where I could call my congressman and make sure that there's some people from my district and from UAPB who were not selfish for most of us. Some people are, but most people are trying to help young people come up. I raise money, like I hope that I don't have any opposition this time, and if I don't, I will still hold fundraisers
And raise money.
because I don't have GIF money anymore. That was taken away.
Explain when you get a second. Explain a little bit about what some of the
So
things you did
general
with GIF
improvement money used to be sort of this pot of money that was set aside that legislators could take home and support local nonprofits, sports teams, events, organizations, efforts, whatever. Just spreading a little around, depending on what the surplus was. Some years, like when I came in, that's the only year we had it, I think ours was like 30-something thousand. Then I saved mine, most of it, about 2/3 of it, to give to the Delta Rhythm and Bayous, waiting for them to get their nonprofit status. And before they got it, they took all the money because of the lawsuit. So you had, for a lot of members who have rural fire departments in their district, or even municipal ones where we might pool our money because they need to repair a fire truck. Like there are so many needs that they don't get served by your big appropriations or by legislation during the session. So that money was really, really important. And now we not only don't have those funds, we had these tax cuts, right? So you have less money coming in and the same money going out, and actually more money going out because of the needs. You have unaddressed needs like highways. I mean, we addressed a great deal of it, but it wasn't all of it, right? And so it's really nuanced, and it's really something that most people don't want to hear. Or they want to vote for somebody and say, go fix it, go do your job. And that's what I try to do, and that's what most of us do.
Let's talk a little bit about Elaine. We mentioned him earlier in the show. By the way, if you're just tuning in, we're talking to Representative Vivian Flowers. And of course, Tracy Ann Nelson is in with us on Tuesday.
I dragged her in. I thought she could
And
help us.
let's talk a little bit. Of course, they just recently had the commemoration for the Elaine massacre.
That was today.
Yeah, 10.
And so this year they decided to recognize the exonerated 12 who were sentenced to death behind the Elaine race riots. And part of what they do is not only a ceremony, But in different parts of downtown Little Rock, there are plates recognizing that person. It's almost like our what do they call it?
The walk.
The Walk of Fame in
Yeah, the
Hollywood. You know, they have your.
Well, in Atlanta, it's the Civil Rights Walk.
But here, you know, it's
Yeah.
civil rights, and they're plates. They're like brass, gold
Yeah.
plates.
Yeah.
And well, Robert, I'm waiting.
I'm not gonna
Go
say
ahead.
anything.
I'm
not
waiting,
gonna say
Robert.
anything. I'm not gonna say anything.
Robert, say what you said yesterday about those plates, Robert.
It irritated me where they put the plates.
Where?
Because, yeah, they put them down at River Market. There's not a lot of. And to me, it's just me. I don't know. I'm sorry, y'all. But for me, you put those plates down, and there's nothing but white people who walk down there. It's almost like they're walking over our history, just walking on top of our history. To me, that's me. That's me.
That's a
y'all.
way
That's
to
me.
look at it.
That's me.
That's a way to look at it. But I think that I look at it like, I mean, anything that's gonna be etched in the ground, people gonna walk over it. So I look at it like it is something that people, where it's an opportunity for people to learn. You know, I think that unfortunately, black people and white people are rarely given an opportunity to know and understand the history and
yeah.
contributions of black Arkansans and African Americans throughout the country. And there are contributions to the history of the state and to the history of the nation. And I love it. I think it's important, and that doesn't mean that everybody who walks on the ground even notices it, but some people do. And I think it's important to memorialize the same reason that a lot of your Civil War monuments to the side that lost is important in my mind to come down.
Oh, yeah.
It's just as important for those monuments, symbols, statues, plates, whatever,
To go up.
to go up.
Yeah, I agree with that.
See, Robert.
I mean, no, I said that's me. That's just me. I ain't say it got to be you, Dave. I know you don't think that way. You like white people. You love white people.
Oh, my God. What do you say?
You don't
Okay.
like white people?
I love
So-
all people.
David, I should tell you,
yes, ma'am.
in talking,
about
you
to
know, Vivian mentioned about principals and educators, and when schools and communities were integrated, what the loss was in the black community, right?
Yeah.
So this past weekend, you were invited to our gala, but was unable to attend.
Yeah,
It's okay. All right, no.
Oh.
It was good.
And I
I hate I missed it, but I was supporting Little Rock Central.
no, and congrats
Hell
to
to the
Little
Old
Rock Central, right?
Hell to the block.
But in my
None that you
speech,
like.
when I spoke at the gala, what I said, and I hope people didn't get upset about it, was African Americans who owned their own leadership roles, who had their own building, who led, schools of African American children, gave up all of that.
I agree.
And it's a huge loss because now we don't even see that in our community. We don't see that history. We don't see that legacy, right? Because we don't recognize it anymore because it's fully blended in. And
In other words, where is the black community in Little Rock per se? Or in any city. You can go to many cities and you've got a Hispanic community, you've got an Asian community, you've got Chinatown. I love going to LA because I can go to so many different ethnic enclaves. You've even got a Jamaican area in Los Angeles.
we don't play everywhere.
Which brings me to this, which I love to read since we're talking about our loss. This is by Dr. Claude Anderson, and it's the book 101 Things They Never Taught You in History Class. And one of the things he broke out is blacks have neighborhoods instead of communities. Okay, a community is where a group lives, works, learns, competes, and thrives. It's where they store their valuables, history, culture, jobs, businesses, and functional schools. Black neighborhoods are like buckets with holes in them. They are porous and do not hold in things of value. A neighborhood is dysfunctional, crime-ridden, impoverished, and transitory in nature. What are your thoughts on that?
So I think that is in many ways a very true statement, but I think it's too general, and I think that it takes away from the community that does exist. Like, there is a great deal of poverty throughout Pine Bluff and throughout my district in particular, which is all situated within the city of Pine Bluff. But everything you just mentioned that describes what community is, we have and more. And so while I think that we need to pay attention to the neighborhoods that have been created and defined by those issues that have been man-made, I think we have to lift up our communities and be clear about what could help us grow those communities. Going back to the very thing we started talking about earlier in terms of community development, economic development. And I would also add, you were saying something earlier about community. I forgot. I'm sorry. And if I think about it, I'll try to interject. But so with this dynamic, whether you're talking about a lack of jobs and sort of a concerted effort to, so the lack of jobs, the poverty, the mass incarceration, health disparities, like we could go look at every institution and assess how we got where we are and look to see how a very concerted effort rooted in discrimination, that rooted in racism, has been the defining tool. And I guess what I would say is, when we look at these sorts of dynamics and we call out the discrimination and the racism, we also have to call out our history and the strength and the power and the success and the evolution and the solutions. You know what I mean? Because right. I think if we keep on talking about the problem, there becomes this there becomes a mindset that's who we are.
A self-fulfilling prophecy, so to speak.
That, not even a self-fulfilling prophecy, almost like that it is
overwhelming,
endemic to who we are.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
That you're always low, you're always under, you're always suffering, you're always poor, like that becomes the definition. As a matter of fact, when you look at poverty, for example, there's a perception that most people in this country who are poor are black. That's absolutely not true.
Right. Most
poor people in America are white. But we know that we know that in terms of the rate of poverty, we are more specifically affected. We have a much higher rate of poverty within black communities, black neighborhoods, black families. But if we keep looking away from the poverty in white communities and the poverty that is very real, then we start to define poverty. Then we become, look at the rhetoric. Then poverty now is a drag that drags down our economy and our culture by black people. So black people are the problem, not poverty, right? And then white poor people have to pretend like they're not poor and are deathly afraid of being associated with poverty, so much so they don't ask for help because I don't want somebody to look at me and think I'm black or associate me with being what is associated with being black, right? So you have white people who are poor in cities. They do not live in the projects.
Well, I think there's more to it than that. It's also that they need somebody to put their foot on too. So.
Well, but it becomes that because of the fear of being thought of being as less than.
Okay, you can give them that.
Well,
I mean, I'm not giving anybody anything. That's what it is.
but a lot of
You
it
can give it an excuse.
when you look at, you know, we've talked about it on the show where the question was asked to some of the poorest people in surveys, would they change places with a black person, and one of the people
Absolutely not.
Exactly.
one of the people
We
that
know
was
that.
in that survey was Michael Jordan. And they still, the majority of them refuse to even want to
'Cause they know.
trade places with Michael Jordan.
Not
Because,
MJ.
yeah, because they
MJ.
understood that the
Because they're-
implications of being black.
Because
Everybody
even when you're
knows.
poor and white, you get to be an oppressor.
Right, right.
Well, no, even when you're poor and white, you get to be protected and you get to
Yeah.
be better than.
That's what I mean.
You're
No,
still
but-
better than that black person.
But a
You
lot of folks aren't really the oppressor. They are oppressed in their own way and in their own communities, and they aren't allowed to say it.
Well, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just
Yeah.
adding to it because my point of view is even poor white people get to be abusive toward black people.
But that's
what I
for
mean.
sure. But that's the whole dynamic of creating this infrastructure and keeping us all distracted. So if you get to kill my kid and not go to jail or not go to prison, and we are fighting about that and fighting about racism and discrimination and police shootings, Walmart's still making billions.
Right.
And we all still working for Walmart, and we all still shopping at Walmart. Don't mean to use I'm just using them as an example. Any multinational corporation is still going to be fine no matter what happens to my son or what happens to the white woman's son down the street who also is overdosing by opioids. So
Yeah.
whether we're talking about
Yeah.
drugs
I hear you.
or the prison, the
System.
prison industrial complex, mass incarceration of black men is a very real issue, but most people in this country in prison are white. And so when you look at the number of people in, I forget the year, and you can look at DuVernay's documentary.
13.
Oh yeah, 13.
13.
Yes.
What I think it was like almost 300,000 people, and maybe in 72, and then now it's 2.3
Million.
million.
Yeah.
Over half of those people are white people, so that some other white people can have a job, and all of these other dynamics, even schools. I remember Naeem Akbar said a long time ago that when you see these pathologies play out in the black community, they play out in the black community first,
Right.
but they're going to make their way
To
to
the
white
majority.
communities and the majority as well. But then they're not going to say anything because teen pregnancy is a black thing, right? Being on drugs is a black thing. And so we're not going to say anything. We're not going to go get help. We're going to do this quietly. You see what I'm saying?
Oh, I understand.
We're not going to project this. Look at how drug abuse and drug overdoses and drug sales, drug dealing has been projected. When you think of a drug dealer, even as a black person knowing it's wrong, the image of the drug dealer is a young kid on the corner shaking out, not the banker cleaning the money, and not his son selling the coke
Right.
from his dorm room or from. But all of that's really real.
So we've got to take top to our break. Are y'all gonna hang around? Y'all gotta go.
We gotta go.
Okay. But
Y'all, this is fun.
well, you got to come back, Representative Vivian Flowers. Love having this type of interaction. This is what we do every day. I was gonna say I watched an interesting movie last night about. It was called White Boy Rick. That kind
Oh,
of touches.
yeah.
It kind of touches on your
The drug thing,
those
yes.
themes
It's on
that
Netflix.
you're
I
talking
think I heard
about,
about
and it's a
that.
real.
Matthew
it's-
McConaughey.
Yeah, Matthew McConaughey,
Right.
and it's
White Boy
called
Rick.
White Boy Rick, and it's based on a true story
Yes, yes.
of what happened, how they influenced, how Detroit and the city got this white boy involved and selling mass amounts of cocaine. Fascinating story,
It
and I
is.
was thinking about that as you were
Y'all ever
speaking.
watch the series Breaking Bad? Oh, you
I have
to
not seen
watch
it.
it.
I haven't
Oh my
seen
God,
it.
it was
Yeah.
an awesome show, but it's so real.
Just
This
desperation.
guy, he was a school teacher who started
Right.
selling meth
Right.
and cooking meth, and like it's funny and it was quirky, but it was really good because somebody's selling that meth out there, and they
Yeah,
don't
you
look
know,
like us.
now that you say that, now I understand why Bevins says what he says about teachers. He got it from that show.
Breaking Bad.
Yeah. You know, I don't
You're
know
talking
if
about the
you know.
governor of Kentucky.
Bevins, who's running for
Yeah.
re-election.
Got to give a quick
in
shout
Kentucky.
out, man, before we go to the Oklahoma governor. He freed yesterday.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that in
Yes,
this next
that's
hour.
such
We're gonna
a
talk
good
about that in
love,
this next
man.
hour.
Yeah,
That's
but-
next
He
hour.
freed,
He freed
455.
He commuted a lot of
Yeah.
sentences.
Low level.
Low
I
level
should say,
marijuana.
Yeah, well, low level drug charges and low level burglaries, stuff like that. Non-violent crime. So he-
Non-violent
he'll-
crime.
We got so much other stuff I'd love to talk to you about. I know you got to go, but you got to come back.
I will.
I'm not kicking you out. We got another hour to go, but Tracy is taking you. So,
Tracy saying she ain't got
Yeah, we
time
gonna
for
start-
that.
start
She
coming here
big
with us.
time.
you know, so yeah, definitely come back anytime you're welcome. We're here every day. And Tracy saying, we always love you coming. You know,
I know.
I'd like to get.
No, but I brought her because I thought this was a really good opportunity. Because we were going to have a meeting, and I was like, we need to go here.
But we still gotta meet.
And we still have to
You
meet.
got something to do.
I got a 1:30.
Oh well.
She big time though. She don't have time for us little.
No,
guys.
it's just.
And by the way,
but we have something really important to talk about,
We
which
do.
you should mention it now.
Voting, voter
Yeah.
registration,
Yes.
voter mobilization, strategies around pushing back against fighting and protecting our communities from voter suppression.
So are we gonna have meetings about that?
I don't know.
Nah, I doubt it.
We
I don't know
have
if we
to.
need to have meetings.
We don't need to have meetings.
We just need to
have
do it. I
strategy.
mean, we're all tired
No,
of
no, no,
meetings.
no.
Can we say that?
Right.
Are we tired of
That's
meetings?
why I said that.
We want to do work.
We want solutions. We don't need meetings
We
anymore.
don't need meetings to
Right.
register people to vote.
Right.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be deputized. It's not no big training.
Yeah.
You just register people to vote.
As long
And-
as you are a registered voter.
Even if you're not,
And yes,
don't
right,
do that.
even if
Dad.
you're not. So yeah.
Yeah,
You hating already. See, you be saying that.
Oh,
was
one
me.
thing I need to share.
Robert doesn't believe in voting.
I don't know how many people are listening. I don't care who it is. Tell somebody this. In the state of Arkansas, if you are a convicted felon and you have completed your sentence or your disposition with the state, could be fines and fees, could be parole, probation, it could be your prison sentence. But when you are finished with everything, completely, you can register to vote. Don't let
Good-
anyone tell
good
you
info.
differently.
Good info. All right, we've got to take the top out of the break. Again, thanks a lot for coming in, Trace Ann as well. And by the way, I was going to tell you, I got a new jerk chicken recipe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I gotta try
I
it.
came up with it myself.
Oh,
God.
So I'm just letting you know.
God.
Representative Vivian Flowers, it's been a pleasure to meet you again and have you on the show. You're more than welcome. We have quite a few other representatives on as well. Elliot, Chesterfield, all of them. So you're more than welcome to come back anytime you like.
My pleasure.
Okay.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, we've got to take the top of the hour break. You listen to Black Focus Radio. It's called Our Issues, Our Solutions, Our Voices on joinnetradio.com.
Boom.
Hi, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for coming in. And Tracy, thank you for,
Yeah, thank you for bringing in the big timers.
yeah.
Offices of James F. Gall provides our clients
Just be up in that game. Tracy, up in that game.
have brought hundreds of
Thank you, appreciate it. Have a good day.
federal court and recovered millions for our clients. If you or a loved one have been injured
Pretty cool.
or have property
Glad to have her
wrongfully
on.
damaged, we may be able to help. Do not hesitate to contact our firm anytime for a free attorney consultation. Call 1-800-848-1290. That's 1-800-848-1290. Or email inquiries at arkansas-personal.
That's where I'm trying to get the show to. That when people like that, they can go to Black Focus, sit down, let's have a conversation. You know what I'm saying? That's where we're moving there slowly. But that's where I'm trying to get, where they know that okay, let's go to Black Focus. Let's call Dave or Rob and see if we can get on the show today. Talk about this issue. And then our listeners know that we're gonna have those people on the show where they can come in and they'll listen.
Right, yeah, right, too.
The funeral is a celebration of a life and legacy, so the entire staff takes great pride in the caring, personal, and professional services they provide. Cremation, funeral planning, burial policy, life insurance, notary, and monument sales are just a few of the services.
So Central's in the playoffs.
As well. Mitchell Funeral Home appreciates
We're gonna have to
the trust
decide
they
if we're gonna
place
go.
in them and will continue to enhance their
I guess we will, because it looks like they're gonna be playing
Get connected. 870-246-2611.
Northwest Arkansas.
870-246-2611.
So I'm thinking about going up that Friday night. That Friday, getting a hotel and staying overnight, coming back Saturday.
And
where is
it? They're gonna be playing in Northwest Arkansas somewhere. Because I don't know if I'm gonna want to make that drive back.
I wouldn't want to.
You know, my younger days would be no problem, but now I'm like, shh, give me a hotel, man.
Spend a night road back.
So I'm thinking that's what I'm thinking about. I'm gonna do so.
Toll-free number 1-877-BB1. Diapers, pull-ups, hospital beds, wheelchairs, Simply Fit, diabetic supplies, underpads, and more. Your durable medical supply center.
LeBron James is the greatest player we've seen this generation. You have to be careful when you start saying, well, he wasn't as good as Mike, but he wasn't as good as Magic. Every generation you get that. You begin to sound like that old man that lives down the street, and every time you walk on his yard, and you even walk by his yard, he's on the porch, and he's got that little crooked finger, he's like, get off my lawn! Get off my lawn! Join the weekly sports magazine every Saturday, 8 to 10 a.m. on JoinNetRadio.com. Get off my lawn!
The views and opinions expressed today on Black Focus Radio are not the views and opinions of the station, its management, or its advertisers. Now, let's get ready to focus on our issues, our solutions, using our voices on Black Focus Radio.
Welcome to Black Focus, the show designed with our community in mind, where we focus on our issues, developing our solutions, using our voices.
Yeah, I know. I don't think it's going to be a game. Their last game is, let's see.
Black Focus starts right now. Phone lines open at 855.
I don't think there will be a game.
83. So here's your host, David W. Coleman and Robert Webb.
All right, welcome back to the second hour of the show. Some of y'all were listening to, because let's see, Central's last game is tonight. Next weekend, I'll have to look at the schedule, is when they'll be going to Northwest Arkansas for the playoffs. We'll work out the logistics somewhere along the way, but the odds are that we will be broadcasting that game here on JoinNet Radio for sure. So it's historic. We need to be there. The more I think about it, we need to be there. So we'll work out the finances and things of that nature later. A couple of things I want to talk about this hour. Did you hear about the black cop who killed the white woman? So check this out. This is from News One. The tables have been turned. A black cop was afraid for his life due to a thug with a knife and pulled the trigger. The cop will not be charged with the crime. The incident happened October 25th at 6 a.m. at a La Quinta Inn in Bossier City, Louisiana. Officer Patrick Edmonds Jr., who was black, arrived to the scene after an emergency call about a disturbance. Edmonds found Shannon Rupert, 45, in the lobby wielding a pair of scissors. In the body cam footage, the officer is telling the lady to put the scissors down. She can be heard saying, "You're going to have to shoot me, nigger." She also said, "You're not taking them. Shoot me. You're not taking them. Shoot me. You're going to have to shoot me." Repeatedly, he says he will shoot her if and to not come towards him. Rupert decided to charge the officer, and he shot her twice. She later died at the hospital. Okay. Her cousin, Melinda Peterson, told KSLA, "What I'm disputing is why they could not have used a taser instead of, or dummy bullets, because those dummy bullets will knock you down." What are you smiling for?
I'm not smiling. It's not a smile.
There's like a glee on your face.
No, it's not a smile.
What is it?
I'm just thinking. I understand her point.
Do you?
And as a black man, I can relate.
You can. Now, I'm not gloating the fact that this lady died, but this is a classic example for white people out there who don't understand this dilemma that black people are dealing with, that we've been talking about not just recently, but for decades, is the fact that you realize now, when the shoe is on the other foot, how odd that is, how wrong that seems to be, because we've heard black mothers and fathers for years say, couldn't they have used a taser? Couldn't they have used, some de-escalation devices?
You know what? Has she not broke the law? Has she not broke
Has
the
she
law?
complied?
Had she complied, she would never got shot.
She wouldn't be dead.
Yeah, she should have complied.
Now, you see how...
No, she should have complied, because you know what? You only get shot when you don't comply.
Mm-hmm.
So if she had it done like she was asked, she'd be alive right now. God bless her soul.
Well, maybe she had a mental illness.
Well, maybe her family should have said that when they called the police.
Man, you're cold.
No, I mean, that's truthful. Why are you laughing, Dave? See, now that's what I'm talking about right there. You're just completely insensitive.
I'm not being... Okay, all right. District Attorney Shula Marvin has now concluded the officer committed no crime. Based on all the evidence reviewed, it is my firm opinion that no crime was committed by the officer, as his actions constituted justifiable homicide.
I'm so familiar with those words.
Russ said maybe she was on meth.
Really? And if she was on meth, she probably could have been really strong.
Yep. See, you're wrong for that. You see? You are wrong for that, Robert.
No, seriously, she could have
She could have been stronger than 10 women.
10 women. She could have been stronger than 12 men. She posed a threat to herself and others, and he didn't have a choice. I mean, I hate for anyone to pass like that, but I mean, really, if she just had to comply, because the police don't shoot people who are not doing wrong. They only shoot people who are doing wrong. We all know that.
Jackie says, now that the shoe is on the other foot, they want them to use a different method. Karma. What goes around comes around.
Oh my God. I can't today.
Y'all are just being really insensitive.
Really
today.
insensitive.
Y'all really are.
Because we have to show support for her. We have to show support for the family in their time of
Well, I'm sending my thoughts and prayers.
In their time of bereavement.
I'm sending my thoughts and prayers for that officer. You know what? I'm wondering if that officer is going to get a GoFundMe account to handle his psychological counseling that he's going to need after killing a person.
He's not going to get any. He's not going to need any. He was doing his job. That's part of doing his job. I mean, what's interesting is that, he didn't go to prison, but the black guy went to prison. The black guy in Minnesota went to prison. I wonder what the difference was. He said he feared for his life as well. I wonder what the difference was.
Maybe Minnesota.
Yeah. I don't know.
I don't know. I'm just saying.
Because he was in his car, in an alley, responding to a call.
Right.
And he shot and killed her as she approached the car.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why he wouldn't get off either.
Maybe he didn't have a body cam.
Did this guy have a body cam?
Yeah, they had a body cam. There's actual footage of...
If memory serves, there's a video of this shooting. The dash cam in the car, right?
The dash cam, but not... Well, as a matter of fact, I think there was a camera now that I think about it.
I don't understand the difference. I'm really confused. That's really confusing.
Well, maybe the tides are turning.
Well, as we know, Little Rock are getting body cameras.
And
we'll see what happens.
So that reminds me, if they're getting body cameras, what's going to be tied to if I turn it off?
Well,
what will be the penalties?
From my understanding, there's no way to turn them off.
Yes, there are.
From my understanding, there's no way to turn them off. And once they put them on, the body cams automatically activate, and they deactivate when you take them off, supposedly. That's what I understand to be true. Maybe Russ can give us some more insight in that one. But
I want to see the brand of body camera, because typically they have to have it connected to a battery pack. Now, if the battery pack is self-enclosed, that's one thing. Now, from what I understand is that it's supposed to come on when they hit something in their car. I've forgotten exactly how the process works, but one of the major problems is that many police officers across the country has been using disabling methods to their body cameras. And the point is that if that's the case, then there should be penalties in place that if it comes out that you've tampered with that body cam for whatever reasons, it went off accidentally because that should not be happening, then there should be penalties. That's just what I'm saying. Okay. Also, you mentioned at the top of the end of last hour about what's going on in Oklahoma. People applaud after the Pardon and Parole Board read names of 527 Oklahoma inmates recommended for commutation at the Cape Bernard Correctional Center in Oklahoma City beginning November 1st. Oklahoma will release more than 400 inmates after a state panel approved what they say is the largest single mass commutation in U.S. history. And as you did last hour, I too want to applaud the state of Oklahoma, who has been known to have some pretty antiquated laws, by the way, but to release over 400 inmates, nonviolent inmates. You know, again, you talk about, and we mentioned it a little bit last hour, of the number of people that are in prison in America. I mean, America has more people in prison than many of the communist nations. Did you know that?
Yep. They have the highest population. They have the highest prison population in the country.
In the world.
States. I thought it was in the United States. Okay.
No, they have the highest prison population than people like China, South Africa. You know, it's just amazing to me how this continues. But again, I want to take my hats off to the governor for allowing this to happen. It needs to happen across the country. Although in there are some prisons who are trying to keep people from learning Black history. I don't really understand the motivation behind that. But again, that's a good step in the right direction. These guys, I mean, here's what really frustrates me about this so-called paying your dues to society. If I've paid my dues to society, why is it that when I come out I can't vote? I'm just saying. It doesn't make any sense to me. So, but again, good job on their part, and we'll keep you posted on if there are other states. Don't expect Arkansas to do anything like that. They're too busy building private prisons now. Oh, by the way, you know, I've mentioned a number of times on the show the private prison industry in the state of Tennessee, and there was a message came out last week that the juvenile justice system in Tennessee is failing the juveniles. Well, I knew that 15 years ago, but y'all didn't want to hear us because there were too many people making money off of juveniles because you were sending them to the big house. You didn't need to rehabilitate them, because if you didn't rehabilitate them, then the odds of them coming into your bigger private prisons were higher. So, welcome to the new world. It's about time y'all decided to do something about that. Also, white supremacist Richard Holzer arrested in plot to blow up Pueblo's Temple Emmanuel, which is a synagogue in Pueblo, Colorado, which is a beautiful town, by the way. I've been there a couple of times. The FBI says it has prevented what it believes was an attempt to commit a major hate crime in Colorado. Okay, so why is this guy a terrorist? Did you know that there are not laws in the United States that determines what a domestic terrorist is? Did you know that?
Yep.
So that's a terrorist act. So let me flip the script on you. Had my name been Salid Muhammad, would I be charged as a terrorist? You don't have to sigh deeply. Yes, I would.
Yeah, okay.
That's my point.
I just don't want my friend Sahid, because I have a friend named Sahid Muhammad. And
oh God,
Sahid, we are not talking about you.
Okay, I'm sorry.
If you're listening today, Sahid.
Alibaba Bada Booty.
Okay, that's cool. I don't have a friend named that. Okay. Yes, he would be considered a terrorist.
So here's a guy. The FBI apparently stopped him. He's not, and I think people need to be aware of that. is that there are no laws in the United States to charge domestic terrorists. There is, as a matter of fact, the piece that I saw on, I believe it was 60 Minutes a couple of weeks ago, there is not even a definition in law that defines what domestic terrorism is. So these guys who are shooting up these schools, shooting up these churches, they're not even being defined as terrorists. And if that's not terrorism, what is? And if those guys were bada booty, they would have been considered terrorists. Again, a double standard. That's the point I'm making.
Okay, Dave.
Okay. I just like saying bada booty.
Yeah, I noticed.
Okay.
I noticed.
All right, we wanted to talk a little bit about Byron Allen.
Okay.
And we'll spend a few minutes on this, but I think what we need to pay attention to is Byron Allen. And fascinating story. I watched a lot of what he said on the Breakfast Club, and I did a lot of research on him last night. And Byron Allen, what was the show that he was it was one of those, it was a comedy show. But what I didn't realize is that Byron Allen's mom she had a master's degree in film from UCLA. And that's how he got his start in the media business. And how neat was that for him to be able to grow up and sit on the stage with Johnny Carson and all of those. A lot of people don't realize Sanford & Son was done in front of a live audience. Mm-hmm. Okay? To be able to sit and watch. So that's how he cut his teeth, so to speak,
right,
in the television industry. So the depth of knowledge that he has is amazing. It really is. So in a recently newly released interview, Allen tells Yahoo Finance editor-chief, I'm not a woman, so I can sue on behalf of a woman. I can't sue on behalf of Hispanic. I can't sue on behalf of gay people. If I could, I would. My standing as an African American, and I want equal access to economic opportunity for all Americans. So he is currently suing Comcast. Allen's company, Entertainment Studios, filed lawsuits against Comcast Charter Communications in 2015 and 16, saying both cable companies had violated the Civil Rights Act of 1866, which established the right of African Americans to enter into contracts as white individuals could. Allen points to the cable companies repeatedly declining his license to license his networks. In contrast with other distributors like DirecTV, Dish Network, and Verizon that agreed to carry his programming. So all the others are carrying it, but Comcast and Charter are not. So he's currently suing them for $20 billion. Now, I'll explain to you why this is important to me and why it should be important to you. Now, in a statement by Comcast, we believe that the civil rights laws are an essential tool for protecting the rights of African Americans and other diverse communities, according to a spokesman. We are fully aligned with the view that this case should never have happened, and we continue to hope that Mr. Allen would do the right thing and withdraw his claim, a move that would promptly terminate the Supreme Court case and bring this entire episode to an end. The case cannot detract from Comcast's strong civil rights and diversity record and our outstanding record of supporting and fostering diverse programming from African American owned channels. So I want to stop there. How many black channels are owned on cable?
Only TV One that I know of.
Thank you. Rest my case.
Yeah, that's the only one.
Okay. Well, Oprah owned.
Forgot about OWN.
Now, if y'all know of any other black channels out there that you can get on cable, let me know. And this is the whole point what Byron Allen is trying to do. He's trying to basically desegregate the cable industry as it relates to programming is concerned. Now, why is that important? It's the same as what we talked about yesterday. Well, I'm sick of seeing drug dealing movies.
Right.
Okay? So you're seeing there's going to be, and I'm curious to find out because that new black network is supposed to be coming online here, I believe, on the 13th of this month. I'm curious to find out if it will be on cable. That's one thing that I didn't see in some of the information I was reading about. But Byron Allen has taken on the cable industry. And the fact that it's going to the Supreme Court, that means that he's got something. It hadn't been thrown out.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the fact that it's going to the Supreme Court, let's see, a district court dismissed Allen's suit, but earlier this year, the Ninth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals allowed the case to proceed, determining that racial discrimination could plausibly have contributed to the decision to forego Allen's programming, and that the First Amendment could not be used to dismiss the case. The Ninth Circuit decided that racial discrimination need only have contributed to the programming decision rather than have been the determining factor. Now, theoretically, he could win this case. And this could change Comcast and cable as we know it. Because, they used to have, they don't do that anymore. I think with deregulation, remember they used to have the cable access channels. Do they still have those?
I don't know.
So those cable access channels were designed to help foster the First Amendment and keep cable companies out of this stuff. So remember, you get all kinds of crazy people doing cable access. You got KKK people on it. You got, black separatists. You got people dancing, you got all kinds of things. I don't know that, I'm pretty sure, now I don't have cable now, but the last time I had cable, I don't recall them having a cable access channel, because I know I participated in cable access while I was in Memphis, because I had a show in Memphis, and then I did it somewhat in Nashville. But the whole point is that I think this is huge, and this is why. Because we have to start telling our own story. We need black faces behind not only the camera, but in the boardroom to determine what is proper and what is not proper, okay? You say all the time, Robert, that we don't even own our own history. Well, you're exactly right about that in a lot of instances. But we don't even own our own images that are portrayed to our children every day. Okay?
I agree with that totally, yes.
So this morning, for instance, when I was getting ready to come to the station, I forgot it's some superhero cartoon. Yeah, I watch cartoons. Okay?
You be the man.
It's new.
You be the
and it's based on the Avengers. But I found it fascinating that 1, 2, 3, there were a total of 4. There were 7 of them, and 4 of the heroes were people of color. 2 one was a black male, black female, another was a Hispanic female, and another one was an Asian female. Okay? So diversity is important. It is important for your children to see, look, if your children grow up, and it's kind of what Representative Flowers was talking about. If all you see when you grow up is negativity, the odds of you growing up negative is gonna be that way. It's like children live where they learn. If I grow up in the projects, all I'm gonna know is a project. I'm channeling Boys in the Hood at the beginning, where that they had become so used to seeing dead bodies. That opening scene where they were kids, and it said, "You want to see a dead body?" Because they're so used to it.
So used to it. It's commonplace.
It's commonplace, And if we don't change that dynamic through the media, because that's where all of the negative stereotypes really began, believe it or not. It's through the media, because what is one of the first things that most parents do with their little kids now? They plop them down in front of a television. Okay? And just recently, and we've seen the white doll, black doll test, and that I saw one more recently, and still today, black children think that white dolls are prettier than black dolls. You see?
Yeah.
And what that is subliminal brainwashing. So what you have to try to do is counteract that, and that begins with having programming that shows black faces in a positive light. Not drug dealers, not prostitutes, not shucking and jiving, not comedians. We need black news anchors. I would like to be able to go to a black station, just like what's the Hispanic station? I'm drawing a blank. God, I can
Telemundo.
see Telemundo. I would like, and when you go to Telemundo, if you cannot check this out, if you don't speak Spanish, you can just hope to try to figure out what they're saying, because the whole station is in Espanol. You see what I'm saying? So where is that black station? That's why this is so important. We need that. We need a black station that's going to do more than this. I mean, people watch OWN, but every time I'm watching OWN, what is OWN? Nothing that's significant. We need black news. We need we talked about they're getting CNN as see. Here's the thing. Here's why you know it's changing. And Tanya, because when the regular news stations networks begin to try to counter out that programming, CNN is getting a black news network. Okay? Now, let me be honest with you. It's still CNN. Okay? And all CNN is trying to do is counter what a lot of these black moguls are trying to do as far as bringing black stations. Because CNN depends on black listenership, black viewership. But it is important that we begin to tell our own story. It's so important, folks. I cannot stress that enough. I am part of the media. I've watched this thing change. I've watched how they've used the media to manipulate you. Look, I don't have to have a damn gun at all. As a matter of fact, what was Tokyo Rose? Do y'all know who Tokyo Rose is? To show you the power of the media.
Yeah.
Those of you who don't know who Tokyo Rose was, I should say, not is. Tokyo Rose was the female who was used by the Japanese government as a propagandist. So wherever you go, or whenever you were in that area in Southeast Asia, they were piping Tokyo Rose into the minds of not just its own citizens, but to the American soldiers as well, to try to manipulate them. That's what the media does. The media is nothing more than a manipulating tool, and he who controls the media controls the world. So you disagree? See Fox News and Rupert Murdoch. They have their own world. Not even based on facts at all. They make up their news. In fact, they will attack people that have facts so that they can fit their narrative. Now, that's not what I'm asking for a black news station. But we need black folks. I want my little black grandson to grow up. And fortunately, because I'm in the media, they understand media. But I'd like for them to grow up and say, hey, I want to be a black anchor. I want to be a black reporter. Now, look, let's be honest. ABC, NBC, CBS, they have black reporters. We know that. But to be able to get the news from the black perspective, that's so important to me. It should be important to you. And that's why we're talking about this, because you've got to understand why this suit is so important. Why it is so important. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. If it goes to the Supreme Court, he's not going to win. You know why, right? Mm-hmm. Because of all of the Republican appointed justices. I don't think he'll win. We'll see. So I just thought that was interesting. And if you haven't had a chance to go out and read that, see it. Let me find, let's see, April Ryan is one of the people that's going to be on that Black News show. And I'll be honest, you know why I watched Joy Reid? Do you know why I watched Joy Reid?
I don't.
It's because she's black. I watch the others too, but you know, I like Joy Reid. She's not on there putting on airs. She's not trying to pretend like she's white. She does a great job. By the way, April Ryan, Andrew Gillum, Bakari Sellers, and Angela Rye. Boy, that ought to be an interesting panel right there.
What is that?
This is the show that CNN is fast tracking, an all black panel show. And that side was for.
I don't know. I'm just not feeling it today. I'm just not feeling it today.
Why, Rob? You're not okay.
I'm just not.
You need a hug, huh? Because if you do, I'd try to go out there and find someone to hug you, because I ain't hug you, you know. But I think that's going to be an interesting show. It says, we are told that the cable network hopes to hire regular CNN contributors April Ryan, Andrew Gillum, Angela Rye, and Bakari Sellers as panelists for a brand new show. The plan was kicked into high gear following the positive response the group received after appearing on the network's morning show, New Day with Allison and John. So we'll see what happens. But I know why they're doing that.
Why is that?
Because there is in the works other black networks. And again, it goes back to the diaries. A black person's vote in a diary is worth more than a white person's vote. And that's how they sell advertising. You understand that, right?
I'm just so miserable right now.
What's wrong, Robert?
Because
what?
I don't know. I'm just a bomber right now.
Well, Latanya said Robert hasn't had his Snicker today. Maybe that's it. Okay. And you're right. Joy Reid is a very smart woman, and then she chocolate too.
I'm just tired of being exploited.
How do you stop it?
I just can't take being exploited anymore.
Are you saying that CNN is exploiting? I think they are.
Man, come on. Yeah. Man, come on, man.
I would like to see those same four go join one of these two black networks that are about to start up.
No, what I want to see is I want you to really tell me the impact that this is going to have on me as a black man. Because I often hear about the news, but I don't hear how it impacts me, because everybody thinks that everything impacts everybody the same way. Mm-hmm. And that's just not true, right? And
so what if it impacts a million other black folks, but it doesn't impact you?
That's usually not the case.
But what if it does?
Cool. But my point is that when we talk about politics, we have entrenched ourselves in federal politics. And what's unfortunate about that is that our local politics impact us far quicker than federal politics. And we will spend all day listening to federal pundits talk about federal politics when there are things going on every Tuesday at board meetings and quorum court meetings that impact your life instantly, but we're not conscious of it. Because again, they got us focused on this big red apple, right? That we're not noticing that they're just like slowly pulling money out of our pockets. Because I mean, think about it. If we understand that education is a local issue, education adequacy fund is on the local level, mm-hmm. then why are we not putting more emphasis on local elections, local issues, right? Mm-hmm. That's what's troubling to me.
So here's how this can be a positive, and I totally agree with what you're saying. But here's how this could potentially work, okay? Mm-hmm. So for instance, we know for a fact that the lady who owns MeTV locally is black.
Right.
If we begin to see more and more black people buying local stations, having local programming, then the potential is that you will have more shows like Black Focus or others that will address the issues that black people need to understand that will affect their pocketbook. Part of the problem that I've said as it relates to the schools and the teachers is that they don't have a medium by which they can utilize to get their message out. Neither do black politicians, for that matter. If black politicians need to get their message out, well, guess where they have to go? They have to go to white stations. Okay? As a matter of fact, there aren't any, if there is, there are not any major black-owned radio stations in this city, except Joynet. Okay? KOKY is not owned by black people. So I think the benefit of this will be that hopefully that in the move to diversify the media, that it will open up doors for local programming to address certain issues. So for instance, I'll tell you, and you all don't know this, but when I first came to Little Rock, I knew I wanted to do a talk show. And I decided, do I want to do a sports talk show every day, or do I want to do a news talk show every day? And I went to a couple of quote unquote black stations. They turned me down. You know why?
Wow.
They were afraid that their advertisers wouldn't like the program.
Wouldn't like the content.
Wouldn't like the content. Okay. So it was JC who called me and said, hey, and I was doing a sports show on KABF every Thursday evening, and it was pretty clear to him that, hey, you know news talk. Would you be interested in doing a news talk show? Of course I would. Because that's ultimately what I wanted to do.
Right.
So my point in saying all of that is that hopefully by having these shows or having more black people move into this medium, then it will open up what you're saying, Robert, is for local shows that will begin to talk about issues as it relates to voting, how it affects you, all of those things that you're talking about. Because right now, with getting from a national perspective, and you have to blame deregulation on this, is because every radio station at one point prior to deregulation had to have, in fact, when I worked at WHBQ, we had to have X amount of PSAs every week that was free. That was what Comcast was all about. That had to be free. That no longer exists anymore simply because of deregulation. And what really brought it to a head was there was a big fire, and this happened years ago. There was a fire in a train that had derailed with oil, and all of the stations had been bought up by Comcast, by Charter, by Clear Channel, it was 3 different major conglomerates who went out and bought up all the radio stations. And they were piping all of their music. It was pre-programmed from New York or wherever their main studios was. And they realized that when this train derailed, that the people in that community could not get information on the derailment and the evacuation plan. Okay? So that's when this started changing back. But unfortunately now with the internet, we could go out and buy a radio station right now, but it would be throwing money down a rat hole.
Yeah.
Okay?
Brick and mortar's gone.
Brick and mortar is gone. So hopefully what'll happen, and I say all this just, giving you a little history of how we got here. I'm hoping that what'll happen is that those concerns that you have will be mitigated somewhat as more and more black people start getting into the media business.
Well, I think it's a reason to shift your focus away from what's happening to you every day in your hometown, for you to focus on. Because you can ask people, what's going on with Trump. People can tell you they about to impeach him,
right?
But you ask somebody, are they going to increase your garbage fee?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know. Why would I know that? Because that's directly impacting you now,
right?
Right.
But shouldn't 7, 11, and 4 be addressing those things?
Yeah, but not every. But I read a great article.
But they're not.
Said that 70% of the people, 70% of people are getting 70 to 80% of people are getting their information or their news from Facebook.
Yeah,
that's a bad thing. So
well, actually, it isn't.
It is a bad thing because if you're dependent on Facebook to give you your information, that means you're not doing anything independently of Facebook.
I disagree with that.
Okay.
I understand what you're saying,
So if nobody posts anything about what's happening locally, then you don't know.
But local television is not posting anything about what's happening locally.
Yeah.
Or more to the point, I don't watch local news.
Yeah, I think it's our job to be informed, though. It's our job to be informed.
I agree,
we
but
should be informed.
Right, but understand my point is that the way people receive news now, it's changed.
Yeah,
See,
I
when
totally agree
when
with
we
that.
grew up, all we had was 3 channels.
Yeah.
Okay,
4, 7, 11.
4, 7, and 11. All right.
We had 5.
Well, we had 4 because we also had PBS.
Channel 2, yeah.
But then, of course, the independent channels came along.
16.
Channel 16, which is where I actually got my start in the media as an intern. But the point being is that you weren't getting the right information then. You were getting filtered news then. Okay? Now, at least, you have an opportunity, not just via Facebook, but the internet as a whole, to go out and research what needs to be done, what needs to be said in your community, thus rising independent television and radio stations. That's important because a conglomerate is not going to be more concerned about what's happening locally. So before I started this show, I got my first show doing not the Still and Bill show, but the Bill Atkins show, which was a black radio talk show in Memphis. Once they bought up all the stations, those shows went away.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So now that those stations are now having to diversify again, shows like this and others can expand. But in the meantime, we have to use the mediums that are available for us to search out and apply that knowledge. We know for a fact, and we've talked about this, more black people have learned more black history via Facebook than they did in school. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's a good thing. It's a matter of how you use that tool. That tool to me is Facebook to get knowledge. Now, if that's the only tool you use, it's similar to the only thing you watch on TV is sitcoms or soap operas. Then you're not using that tool for its full benefit.
Right.
Okay? So Facebook is just a channel on the internet, just like 3, 7, and 11 or whatever channels you have on your television is.
Right.
Okay? What you use to change the channel and what channels you utilize is how you become more effective. You understand what I'm saying? So in realistic terms, you just have cable and you got 100,000 channels.
Right.
As opposed to having 32, if that makes sense.
That makes sense.
Okay? So what we have to start doing is seeking out those channels that are going to provide us information for our edification. Okay? Because now there's no excuse. We used to say the media has it all locked up. It's not that way anymore. I get my black facts from a black website. Multiple black facts. You know, we used to couldn't do that.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
I agree. I don't disagree with any of that. But my point is that if we're not getting information, that information from, directly, if we're not using strong sources for our information, then where are we getting it from? How are we educating ourselves about the issues happening locally? Because we have no knowledge of what's happening locally.
I agree.
And that's not a good thing because those things impact you almost instantly. Mm-hmm. Unlike the federal legislation, which could take up to 5 years, sometimes 10,
right, before
it actually goes into effect. So the thing for me is just that people need to be more educated about what's happening in their life, what's happening in their world, and how they can be more impactful in changing the outcomes of certain things.
Well, I hear what you're saying, but here's one thing that we used to always talk about when I did my sports show. And that was when the Titans wouldn't pack out, the first thing we would say on the show is, you can't make a person spend money where they don't want to.
Right.
So So if I decide that I don't want to go, and let's bring it locally. If I decide that I don't want to go to the Razorback game when they play Missouri the day after Thanksgiving, that's my money. I have a right to do that.
Very true.
Okay? The same thing applies to, because typically people spend their money when they're getting something out of it.
Right.
Right? So the same thing applies to a radio station or a television station. What am I getting out of that? And that's why it's so important to have good programming. That's why you don't realize it, but I stress over this show often. Am I going in the right direction? Am I talking about the things that need to be talked about? That's why it's important to be able to talk about local issues as well as national issues as well, because we have to be able to provide a service to our people that is going to give them good and right information. It is important, and I don't mean to be on a soapbox here, but it's important for this show, in my opinion, to make sure that the information that we're giving out is going to empower our people. That's why it is our issues, our solutions, our voices. And as we get more and more stations, hopefully that programming will happen in other parts of the country as well. That's how you solve this problem, because we can solve the problem by giving information. And once people become aware of the information, that's when they'll begin to start acting accordingly. Right now, where do people go to get that information? We know the board meetings are broadcast every Tuesday night, but do enough people know that? I don't know that they do. Or do enough people care enough? Or is there an outlet where they can go and not necessarily go and be looking for the board meetings, but on that outlet, they hear board meetings are tonight at 7 o'clock. Maybe that time they'll say, oh, let me tune in to what this board meeting is all about. That's how this works in the media. So this is an important step back to Byron Allen about opening up the doors to black media and having good content, very good content, and not drugs, gangs, and violence. Because that seems to be, what was the one that was this summer that people were fascinating about? Snowflake out of Atlanta. Why do I want to read, is it Snowflake? Why would I want to watch a story about the comeuppance of a drug dealer? Or Power is the one that people like to talk about now. And it is typically nothing more than a story about a black man destroying his community and destroying everybody else around him, including his family. But again, why is it one of the best shows? I know people who have counsel who will get, it's on Stars. They will get Stars just for the season of Power and then cancel it. You one of them.
I'm one of them.
Okay.
I used to get it for Power and Survivor's Remorse, but Survivor's Remorse is gone, so just Power.
Now, I did like Survivor's Remorse. That was a good show.
Yeah.
But I think they're bringing that back because I was watching Stars. I was watching White Boy Rick on Stars last night.
Okay.
And they advertised, they do the montages.
Yeah.
And they showed Survivor's Remorse. I thought that was a great show.
It was.
I really did. But the point being is that that's the power of the media. So we've got to create content. And Byron Allen and what he's doing is important. Because if we create our own content, then we can start carving out. And that's how you begin to create those strategies. Because guess what? If we're talking about voting in blocks on black media and black people are watching, you understand how that works, right?
It gets traction, it gets traction. But you're going to have a guy like me who's saying, hell no. Heck no, we should be voting in the block. Because again, man, I'm just so frustrated. What are we voting in the block for? What exactly are we voting for? What am I going to get for my vote? Because I want to know what I'm getting for my vote. I no longer just give you. I can no longer just give you my vote. I need to know what I'm going to get. I need to know exactly. I need to be detailed.
That's where the block comes from, Robert.
I need to be detailed.
So if they know.
I need to be detailed and written in blood.
I agree.
Carved in your back.
Yeah.
I need to know.
Yeah.
So when Massa pull your shirt down, he go, oh.
Yeah.
I see why.
I agree. So that's where the block comes into play because they know that, hey, if I'm going to get that block of voters, then I better be able to turn out what I said I was going to do.
And I will not be waiting for you to get everything together. I will not be waiting for that because if
I like Black Lightning too, Tanya. By the way, have you ever watched Black Lightning?
Y'all trying to ignore me. All right, cool.
We're not ignoring you. I'm just responding
y'all
to.
Go ahead and get them folks y'all vote for no reason. They're just like y'all just go ahead and do that. Y'all go ahead and be
Should I read the comment that LaTanya said where she said one Robert is right?
Oh, I'm always right.
We'll ignore that comment.
No,
since we're not listening to Rob. Please continue now. Please continue. Please continue. That's my phone. By the way, that's Prince. By the way, if people ask, what is that song? That's one of those songs, Old School for Sale, by Prince from that album. So anyway, we got to wrap the show up. Again, I want to thank Representative Vivian Flowers for coming in. It sure did. The day went fast. It's daylight saving time, man.
Yeah, that's about over, player. We only got 3 hours of daylight left. What you gonna do with it, Dave? What you gonna do with it?
I'm gonna party like it's 1999.
I hear you. You are sick.
Hope you all enjoyed the show again. Tracy and Nelson, appreciate you as always on Tuesdays. We're here every day, Monday through Friday. Black Focus Radio, our issues, our solutions, our voices. Make sure you always tune us in. Make sure you're telling someone about this show. Make sure you're spreading the word. All of that stuff is important. By the way, if you're a small business, and I get nothing for this, but I think this is pretty neat. There's a program called Pitch and Pint, I should say. And go out to Eventbrite. They're giving away up to $5,000. It's being done by the Venture Center Company for small businesses. So you can go out and win something if you want to check that out as well. We didn't talk a little bit about LeBron. We will talk about him more tomorrow. LeBron has stepped up again as transitional housing to his I Promise school for at-risk families. Black folks, you got some money. You want to make an impact on black communities. You might want to look at what LeBron James is doing. I'm just saying. And by the way, Lakers are 5-1. Oops. All right, we got to go. Rob's, I'm assuming that you're ready today, right?
I'm always ready, player.
Okay, so you got your little quote.
Malcolm said, if you have no critics, you'll likely have no success. Spend money in your own community. If you don't, nobody else will. Peace.
Wow, that was deep, man.
I know, I'm just a deep brother.
Speaking of Malcolm, you have to be very careful introducing the truth to the black man who has never previously heard the truth about himself. The black brother is so brainwashed that he may reject the truth when he first hears it. You have to drop a little bit on him at a time and wait a while to let that sink in before advancing to the next step. Brother Malcolm speaks from the grave. Y'all have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
That's what's up. Oh. I gotta give me something else. Shit.
All right, dude.
All right, man. I'll see you in the morning.
All right. Take care.
Our solutions and our
Oh, shit. I got you.
join us every
You sure should have.
day at 1 p.m. on JoinUpRadio.com.
Okay.